After two races in which Ferrari did almost perfectly, in Austin and Mexico City, in the Brazilian Grand Prix, things unfortunately did not go as planned for the Maranello team. Formula One is a very serious business, and the various factors sometimes lead to mistakes. The prancing horse chose a familiar setup path that usually works effectively. If we rewind, we will recall how, during the 2023 Formula One Championship, the Maranello team opted to optimize top speeds at the 4.309-kilometer Autodromo Jose Carlos Pace in Brazil. The idea was to perform as strong as possible in high-speed sections, focusing the weekend around top speed. However, this decision was not rewarded in the race due to a lack of downforce. In the current Formula One season, the objective was more or less the same, to optimize maximum speeds. For this reason, the engineers and technicians of the Italian side selected the rear wing from the setup which was also used at the Circuit de Catalunya in Barcelona, a generally versatile specification. With more downforce than last season, Ferrari thought it would not suffer the issues faced by the SF24 car. But unfortunately, something went wrong, especially on the mechanical front. The suspension configurations did not provide the required stability. Long radius turns like Turn 6 or the Senna S challenged the Italian cars significantly in entry and mid-corner handling. The chosen setup path was not the correct one for the SF24 single-seater. Misleading enough, it led the Ferrari engineers down a dead end. Even Charles Leclerc did not hide his disappointment after the Brazilian Grand Prix, where he calmly analyzed the various issues encountered over the São Paulo weekend. The poor assessments essentially made the SF24 difficult to handle. Adding the heavy rain that flooded the Interlagos circuit made the situation even more tragic, while Ferrari's strategy was not up to the task, and the pit stop came at an ill-timed moment. A more patient tactic could have brought various benefits and allowed a higher finish for the Monegasque driver. However, the most critical issue was tire management. It is not the first time Ferrari has struggled in changing conditions, a scenario where tire preparation needs to be top-notch. Carlos Sainz's admissions on camera have a reason. Driving the SF24 on water is already challenging due to the car's intrinsic characteristics. If the setup is also incorrect, the driver's feeling with the car drops and trouble follows, as became clear last weekend at Interlagos. In the Brazilian Grand Prix, Ferrari experienced evident difficulties with tire management, a crucial aspect in changing conditions. Pirelli's wet tires have construction characteristics very different from the dry ones, not just because of the tread pattern, but also due to the specific usage requirements needed to achieve optimal performance. To make an intermediate or full wet tire work correctly, it starts with suspension design and setup configuration, where technical choices and compromises are essential. These elements influence the temperature and operating pressure of the tires. This complex balance is crucial to maximize grip and compound longevity, particularly with intermediate tires that require much more precise temperature management. Throughout Sunday, both in qualifying and the race, Charles Leclerc and Carlos Sainz complained several times about tire pressures, an aspect closely tied to temperature control. The issue was clear: the tires could not generate enough heat to reach the optimal temperature window. This inability prevents the tires from operating at their ideal efficiency point. When Formula One compounds stay below the target temperature, the tire's internal pressure does not reach the expected level. This insufficient pressure creates a contact patch that is obviously not ideal, and consequently the contact surface with the track surface is not maximized. The result? A severe loss of grip compounded by increased tire wear. This situation brings to mind Charles Leclerc's early pit stop call. It is very likely, based on onboard footage and listening to the pre-stop team radio communications between the Monegasque driver and his race engineer Brian Bozzi, that the primary reason Ferrari chose to bring Charles Leclerc in early was precisely due to this problem. Both Ferrari drivers encountered grip issues in all three sectors of the Brazilian track. These difficulties pushed them to change tires earlier than scheduled in the pre-race briefing. The effort to bring the tires up to temperature was worsened by the weather conditions, of course, but even the new track surface was not helpful at all. Almost all the drivers voiced complaints about this, notably Max Verstappen, who won the Brazilian Grand Prix. Charles Leclerc also noted that the track surface was not ideal for a wet race. For Ferrari, considering the specific micro-roughness of the track surface and the SF24 car's characteristics, many more laps were needed to generate sufficient heat in the tires. Ferrari team principal Frédéric Vasseur also suggested that the problem was related to stint length. When a Formula One tire wears down, it inevitably loses some millimeters of tread, reducing the deformable portion of the compound. This results in a lower capacity to generate friction with the track surface, as a reduced surface area produces naturally less friction. This explains why Ferrari drivers struggled more and more to maintain optimal temperature as the stint progressed. This factor further exacerbated the lack of grip and the SF24's performance decline. Dust has therefore settled over the Brazilian Grand Prix of the 2024 Formula One season. It was a race to forget, not just from Carlos Sainz's point of view, but even from Ferrari's point of view. Not even a podium, and then a top-5 finish with Charles Leclerc bagging a low-key fifth was perhaps not the best of weekends for the Italian stable. However, what was most saddening from a Ferrari point of view was their most recent Formula One Grand Prix winner Carlos Sainz ending his Interlagos weekend with a retirement next to his name. The Spaniard's woes at the Interlagos circuit began in the qualifying session on Sunday morning when he lost the car going through Turn 2 and made contact with the barrier, consigning him to a Q2 exit. The Spanish driver caused damage to his SF24, which mandated a pit lane start, where he was making slow progress until a spin into the wall at Turn 8 on lap 39 ended his hopes. Carlos Sainz's accidents in the wet track conditions in Brazil and also Canada earlier this season have gone against his renowned reputation as a driver who thrives in treacherous conditions. The outgoing Ferrari racer has admitted that his problems in the rain across the current campaign have been exclusive to difficulties with the squad's 2024 challenger. Carlos Sainz's race-ending crash represented a blow to Ferrari's Constructors' Championship chances as McLaren extended the gap to 36 points with 3 races remaining. Certainly not the type of race weekend that Carlos Sainz, also race winner at the Albert Park circuit in the Australian Grand Prix earlier this year, would have expected. Isn't that right? But having said that, truth be told, it is one thing to have a retirement against your name and something quite other to bounce back to a position of prominence in the very next race. And speaking of the next Formula One Grand Prix, that is precisely what Carlos Sainz would expect, especially with the desire to score more since his Mexico City victory, but unfortunately race retiring at the Ayrton Senna land. Carlos Sainz expressed confidence that they would stay competitive until the very end of the championship, emphasizing that the upcoming 3 weekends would be crucial for the entire team. At the same time, the Spaniard noted the need to refocus, regroup, and strategize to approach the final 3 races in the best way possible, as the battle against rivals McLaren and Red Bull for the 2024 Formula One World Constructors' Championships is very much still on, starting with the Las Vegas Grand Prix, which marks the beginning of the final triple header this year.